Hello, sports fans, and welcome back to Ball Games and Beyond. I am your host, Evan Groat, and Ball Games and Beyond is brought to you by sportsnot.com. Please make sure you go out there and you subscribe and follow to the Sportsnot YouTube channel. Make sure you're clicking that notifications bell as well. And if you prefer to get this podcast just audio, go ahead and search Ball Games and Beyond anywhere you get your favorite podcast from. Now, the topic for this week's show, you probably think I'm going to go NFL, right? Because the NFL kicks off this week, but I'm not. We're going to go to baseball this week because we are in the month of September, which means baseball season is now in the final stretch of their long 162 game season. 21, 22 games left for most of the teams in the league, depending on which team you follow. There's not a whole lot of games left in the MLB season. And we have a couple of division races that are heated up, and it could go down to the wire. And then we also have league races and the wild card race. Both leagues, American and National League, have wild card spots that are up for grabs, and it should be interesting to see how these races finish up here. Now, we have a great guest here that's going to be joining us in just a moment. We have senior writer who covers MLB for The Athletic. We're going to be joined by Tyler Kepner. Okay, he does a great job for The Athletic. He's also wrote a couple books. His latest book is called The Grandest Stage. It's a history of the World Series. What a better time than now to go out there and pick up that book with the MLB playoffs approaching. But we're going to get Tyler on. We're going to ask him some of his thoughts on that AL East division race between the Orioles and the Yankees. Currently, the Orioles have a half a game lead on the Yankees. I'm sure some of you guys saw Clay Holmes, the Yankee closer, blow his 11th save of the season. That leads MLB on Tuesday night. Both of these teams have major concerns with their bullpens right now. I'm sure that'll be a major factor on this division race here in the final weeks of the season. But we're going to ask Tyler about who he thinks will be atop of the standings when the season ends. We're also going to ask him about the AL Central. It looks like the Guardians, who currently have a 4.5 game lead right now, are starting to pull away with it. But I still think there's a couple teams in that division that you never know. I've seen crazier things happen where teams collapse down the end of the stretch of the season. So we'll ask him about that as well. And of course, we're going to talk about the wild card races in both leagues. The Mets, that's right. The Mets are making it very interesting for the Braves. The Mets are surging. They're playing well here recently. And so we're going to get his thoughts on all of that and more when we return on Ball Games and Beyond. Don't go anywhere. You don't want to miss this conversation. Ball Games and Beyond is brought to you by sportsnot.com. Welcome back to Ball Games and Beyond. We bring in our guest now, Tyler Kepner, who is a senior writer covering Major League Baseball for The Athletic. And he is here to discuss with us baseball as it's now in its final month of the season with playoff races heating up all around the league. Tyler, I thank you for your time, and let's jump right into it right now. Starting with the AL East, you have a 2-team race right now between the Yankees and the Orioles. It's been back and forth between these two teams all year long. At the time of this recording, the Orioles currently have a half a game lead on the Yankees. We'll see how each of their games play out later this evening. But as we head into the final 21, 22 games of the year for both of these teams, who do you think will be the last team standing in the AL East?
That's a great question. I mean, when it's pretty much even like this, it could go either way. The Yankees have some problems at the back end of their bullpen, but the Orioles have been trying to square that away too. Right. Both teams have some issues in their rotation, but also some high upside guys. I think the Orioles have a deeper lineup all the way through than the Yankees, and they play a little tighter defense. So I'll give a slight edge to the Orioles, but really you could go either way. But I'll give you a slight edge to Baltimore.
Yeah, and a key matchup with these two teams, the final week of the season, there's a 3-game series where Baltimore travels to Yankee Stadium. That could be the deciding factor in this division race here. Now, you mentioned the bullpen struggles for both teams. Aaron Boone spoke just a few minutes ago before the Yankees game today. He obviously, Clay Holmes, their closer, blew his 11th save of the season on Tuesday night, giving up a grand slam. So he's struggled all year long. Boone's been under a lot of heat to try to make a change at the position. He said they're going to get creative. Now, we don't know what that may look like, but I've heard some things like Luis Heel. He's returning from injury right now. Of course, last year he had the Tommy John, so he's doesn't want to log too many more innings coming off of that injury. But I've heard that maybe they'll even try him out in the closer role. So I just kind of want to get your thoughts on what being creative may look like for the Yankees and how you think ultimately it may affect their chances of winning the division.
Yeah, I mean, Luis Heel is definitely an intriguing option. Despite I don't put a lot of stock in closing experience. I think if you've gotten to the big leagues and you have good enough stuff that you could probably handle the pressure of it. We've seen it time and time again that talented pitchers can almost always do that job. So I wouldn't be surprised if Heel takes to it right away. If he is in fact the guy. I think getting creative means maybe him, maybe a combination of guys based on matchups and pockets of the order and how they are likely to hit against certain guys' stuff. But it sounds like it won't be just Clay Holmes and that's it. He is, he's a really good pitcher. He induces a lot of ground balls, but also, gives up a lot of contact. And last night he was walking guys and then giving up the walk-off grand slam. So 11 blown saves is finally time for Boone to, I think, shake things up.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's time as well. Let's go over to the AL Central. That's another division that the race is interesting. I know the Indians the Guardians are playing well right now, but it is still a 3-team race, I would say, between the Guardians, Royals, and Twins, all vying for that division top division spot there. Currently, Cleveland has won 5 of their last 6 games. As I mentioned, they're playing well heading into Wednesday night's game. Is there any way that you think Cleveland will not be the top team in this division when the season's over with?
I mean, it's always possible, but I think the Guardians have done a really good job this last week or so coming back from the brink of losing that lead. They had a great comeback against the Royals, who were surging at that time, and they really haven't looked back, and the Royals haven't recovered. I mean, they lost Vinny Pasquantino, one of their big hitters, and and since then they've added some veterans, on waivers down the stretch, Tommy Pham and a couple other guys, but they still haven't been able to get out of it. Now they still stay in a pretty good position for the wild card, Kansas City, but I think Cleveland, and Minnesota will have a wild card too. But Cleveland is they're for real. And I think Alex Cobb and Matthew Boyd have really solidified that rotation with just guys you can count on to give you 5 or 6 good, reliable innings when their turn comes up. And all of a sudden, that rotation looks a lot better with Tanner Bybee at the top, and some of the other guys they have there, Gavin Williams, and I'm forgetting the other guy's name right at the moment. But anyway, they're solid enough in the rotation, and they have an outstanding bullpen to carry what's a pretty good offense. I mean, they have just enough guys in there who are real threats. And then the other guys are kind of in there for their glove, because the Guardians sort of see it as it doesn't have to be a traditional sort of way of winning. But if they can have a combination of bullpen and defense and just enough starting pitching, they can win. And I think now their starting pitching is in a position where they'll do that.
Yeah, now outside of the AL East and Central division races, there isn't a lot of drama when you look around the league and see in some of these other divisions. But where there is some intrigue is with the wild card races in both leagues. Staying in the American League here for just a second, most likely this is the way I see it. You're going to have the Yankees and the Orioles as probably the top 2 teams taking one of the wild card spots. Then you have the Twins and the Royals currently as the other 2 teams. Now the Tigers and the Red Sox trail the Royals by 4.5 games. So anything could happen, as you have said, with some of these other division races. Do you think either one of those teams, though, has a late season run in them here?
I really don't. And by the way, that other Cleveland pitcher is Ben Lively. So, No, I don't. I mean, I was thinking that Seattle, would have a shot because they started off so well and they, had been pitching so well. But they haven't hit all season, and now they're under 500. Under 500 in September, I just can't see it. And Detroit's over 500, and so is Boston. But again, I don't really see those teams as playoff quality either. I guess maybe the Red Sox if they can make a run, but they've been struggling lately. Detroit, all credit to them. I didn't think they would have a winning record, but they traded Jack Flaherty. That really hurt their rotation. And most of the time, they have Tarek Skubal, best starter in the league, and then it's an opener just about every day. That's not too much of an exaggeration either. I mean, they have like Montero starts, and the rest of it is just figure it out, and it's been working to their credit, to AJ Hinch's credit. But I don't really see the Tigers having enough depth to go to pass Kansas City. I gotta believe that Kansas City will right itself, and knowing that they have a good starter just about every day, that's a big help.
Okay. Now with the NL wildcard race, to me, I think that one is the most interesting of the two leagues here. You have the Padres, who currently hold the top spot in the wildcard race, followed by the reigning NL champs, the Diamondbacks, and then the Braves have a half a game lead on the surging Mets. Now, that would be an interesting story if the Mets, who, when you look at that roster a few months ago and the way things started out for that team, you would have thought you would call me crazy if I told you they'd be in the playoffs, but they're right there on the doorstep. They also have a 3-game set coming up with the Braves that could determine the final spot here in the division. How do you see this NL wildcard race shaking out here down the final, couple weeks of the season?
Yeah, it's gotten to be really fascinating. I mean, the Mets have those, some prime time players right there in the middle of the order, or in the middle of the mix there with Francisco Lindor and Pete Alonso and Francisco Alvarez. I mean, they've JD Martinez. They've got some really good, producers now in the lineup, and their rotation is more than just stabilizers. I mean, they've got some guys who are really have performed like upper end pitchers, and Sean Manaea and David Peterson to go with Severino and those guys. So I think Quintana. So I think I think the Mets, they're for real. And now it's but if you say the Mets are going to get in, that means who's not going to get in. Right. And I guess you'd say Atlanta at this point, but I saw them a lot over the weekend, and they're still really good, man. Like they still can pitch. I mean, Sale's been the best pitcher in the league, and Schwellenbach, and Morton. I mean, they most nights they are going to give you, Reynaldo Lopez. They're going to give you a really good start. So they have the pedigree as well. They've done this before with injured guys. I know they're so banged up in that lineup, but they still, I think, have enough to edge out the Mets.
I'm interested to get your thoughts on how do you feel, if you were to get inside the head of a manager, okay, who's jockeying for position, whether it's to win the division or just get into the playoffs as a wild card spot. Does it matter that much to them where they go? Because we have seen in the last couple of years where some of the top seeds get upset. And I know there's been some controversy with, the layoff between rounds and whatnot. And baseball players are creatures of habit. We know they like to play every day. So even getting the top seed, having that layoff between wild card round and divisional round, that could actually hurt a team based on what we've seen in the past. Do you think there's anything to that? Do you think the managers really care about where they are seated in the playoffs, or they just want to get in? What do you think about that?
Not much. I mean, they want to get in, and because there is some incentive to win. You get to line up your pitching, and you eliminate the whole possibility of randomness in that first round. There's always a possibility that you're going to lose. So if you could take that from, especially in a 2 or 3 quick little series like that. So even if you're think you have a 70% chance to win, then that's a 30% chance to lose. So you go from that to 100%. So you'll take that, just the math of it, and setting up your rotation. But again, as we've seen, it's not it's not a foolproof thing at all because, as you say, of the routines. And we've seen enough to where, just get in and then win. I mean, it's road teams win all the time in the baseball postseason, all the time. The Phillies and the Diamondbacks the last 2 years have won as 6 seeds, which means you've got to start with the best 2 or 3 on the road. Then you start on the road again in the division series. You have every the road disadvantage in every series. Didn't matter, and then the Phillies last year having this great home field advantage, and it really is. They were up 3-2 on Arizona, a team with very little playoff experience, and Arizona marched in there and unplugged that great stadium. So I've seen it so many times. The road team wins. Look, last year the Texas Rangers were 11-0 on the road in the postseason.
Yeah.
So didn't bother them.
Yep. All right, we'll get you out of here on this last question. When I look around the league, I think it's interesting. We may not have a team win 100 games this year, which would be the first time that happens since 2014. And even some of the top teams, when you look at, if you look at overall standings in Major League Baseball, a lot of these top teams, they have some warts. There really is no far and away, top team, front running team right now. And because of that, at least in my opinion, I think that that's going to make for a very exciting and interesting playoff. There's just so much uncertainty right here. I think this field could be as wide open as we have seen in a number of years. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, even last year in a year where it didn't seem like it was going to be as wide open because the Dodgers and the Braves seemed so much better than the rest of the field. Well, they both got bounced in the division series, so who knows anything, right? Like every time you try to script it out, the game just flips the script on you. So that's what's great about it. We can make these predictions and talk about what we expect to happen, but the game itself has a different story, right? I mean,
yeah.
In that 2014 season, who would have thought that the World Series would be 2 wildcard teams, Kansas City, who hadn't made it in almost 30 years, against the Giants, who were back for more, even though they were a road wildcard team. They went and what? So it was just like, maybe this will be one of those years where just roll the dice and however it comes up is as good a predictor as any.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm looking forward to it. Tyler Kepner, everybody, senior writer covering MLB for The Athletic. You can follow Tyler on X at Tyler Kepner. And I want to mention this real quick before you get out of here. You can check out his latest book. It's called The Greatest Stage, A History of the World Series. I recommend you go out there and do that. Tyler, where can we find the book?
Yeah, thanks, Evan. Yeah, it's called The Grandest Stage, the history of the World Series, and you can just find it anywhere. It's still out in a lot of bookstores that I see. It came out 2 years ago, but the idea was for it to be a timeless sort of look at the series. So we go around and look at a lot of different areas of the World Series, dealing with the pressure, unsung heroes, managing in the World Series, building a World Series team, some of the behind the scenes stories that you probably didn't know of. So I had a lot of fun with it. It's been a passion of mine since I was a little kid. So yeah, thanks. You can find it anywhere. Amazon, Barnes and Noble, the publisher's website, which is Doubleday. So wherever you want to find it, you can order it and hopefully enjoy it.
Excellent. And with baseball playoffs approaching, it's a good time to get familiar with the history of the World Series. So go out there and get the book. Tyler, we thank you so much for the time and keep up all your great work. Thanks again.
Thanks a lot, Evan.